When Grandpa passed away, the entire family gathered like vultures circling a feast. The lawyer's office smelled of old paper and money, a scent that always made my mother's eyes glitter. My uncles whispered, my aunts clutched designer handbags, and everyone waited to hear what fortune they'd claim. I wasn't expecting much. Grandpa and I had been close, but he was eccentric, secretive, and obsessed with his old-fashioned ways. Still, when the lawyer cleared his throat and announced that my cousins each received a few million in property shares, my mother got a vacation home and I, the youngest, quiet one, got his old pocket watch. The air turned electric with laughter and disbelief. They thought it was the ultimate joke. A relic for the relic, my cousin Sam smirked. I tried to laugh too, but my throat burned with humiliation. After all, what could I say? That I deserved more? That Grandpa had loved me differently? My name is Amelia, and this is Amelia Voice. And what happened next changed my life forever. The watch was heavy, gold, and scratched from decades of use. Grandpa had carried it everywhere, winding it every morning at exactly 7 hours. When I was little, he'd let me hold it, whispering, "Time is the only treasure people waste without thinking." I never understood it, until the night I discovered what that old thing really was. At first, I kept it in a drawer, unable to look at it without hearing my family's snickers. They had all moved on, celebrating their newfound wealth. Meanwhile, I was still renting a one-bedroom apartment, struggling with bills and juggling 2 jobs. But one stormy evening when the power went out, I found myself holding that watch again. The tick-tick-tick echoed in the dark, steady and strange, almost hypnotic. I noticed something I hadn't before, the tiniest engraving inside the lid, "To those who look beyond time." That night, curiosity overcame resentment. I fetched a magnifying glass and examined every curve, every dent. There was a small indentation near the winding crown, so subtle it could have been mistaken for wear. But when I pressed it, something clicked, a faint metallic snap, and the back popped open. My heart pounded as I saw not gears, but a folded piece of parchment inside. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, unfolding what looked like a hand-drawn map. There were coordinates, sketched landmarks, and an address I recognized, Grandpa's old cabin up north, the one we hadn't visited since he closed it for repairs years ago. On the bottom of the page, in faded ink, were 3 words: "Trust the clock." Sleep was impossible that night. I felt like I'd stumbled into one of Grandpa's puzzles, the ones he used to make me solve for fun. He'd always said I had the curiosity of a treasure hunter. Now it seemed he'd left me one final game to play. I packed a bag before dawn, heart racing, ignoring the voice in my head that said I was being ridiculous. The drive was long and silent, with the gold watch ticking on the passenger seat like a heartbeat. When I reached the cabin, everything was frozen in time. Dust covered the furniture, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling like forgotten ghosts. But as I walked in, I noticed something. The grandfather clock in the corner, its face cracked, its pendulum still. On its side, the same inscription: "To those who look beyond time." I pulled out the pocket watch and compared the two. They looked eerily similar, almost like pieces of the same puzzle. I turned the small hands on the pocket watch until they matched the time on the grandfather clock, 7 sharp. The air shifted. I heard a click, this time from behind the clock. My pulse surged. I reached around the frame, feeling along the wood until my fingers brushed a cold metal latch. I pulled it, and the entire back panel slid open, revealing a dark tunnel leading downward. My breath hitched. It wasn't just a hidden compartment, it was a passageway. I hesitated for a moment, thinking of how everyone else in my family was probably sipping champagne while I was crawling into some dusty secret. But something inside me, maybe Grandpa's voice, whispered, "Keep going." So I grabbed a flashlight from my car and stepped into the darkness. The tunnel smelled of earth and rust. The walls lined with bricks that looked centuries old. The deeper I went, the narrower it became until I had to crouch. My flashlight flickered once and I almost screamed. Just as panic started to take hold, the light hit something metallic ahead. A door, reinforced with rivets, and right in the center, a small circular indentation shaped like a watch face. My mind spun. Could it be? I pressed the pocket watch against it, aligning its crown with the slot. There was resistance, and then a deep mechanical groan as gears shifted behind the walls. The door slowly creaked open. Cold air whooshed out, carrying the faint scent of cedar and old books. Inside was a room, small but pristine, as though it had been sealed for decades. Shelves lined with documents, blueprints, and ledgers filled the space. In the center sat a safe, massive, steel gray, and gleaming even in the dim light. And on the front, engraved in bold letters, property of Walter J. Thornwood. My grandfather's name. I nearly dropped the watch. The safe had a combination lock, but above it, etched into the metal, were the same coordinates from the map. My fingers shook as I compared them, and realized something chilling. The coordinates weren't random. They corresponded to the time positions on a clock. 12, 3, 6, 9. I looked at the watch again, its ticking louder than ever, and suddenly it hit me. The combination wasn't numbers. It was time. Heart pounding, I twisted the dials in rhythm with the watch. First 12, then 3, then 6, then 9. Each turn clicked louder than the last, until finally, there was a heavy clunk. The safe door swung open with a slow hiss. Inside were stacks of sealed envelopes, an old leather journal, and a small velvet box. My throat tightened. I reached for the journal first, the handwriting unmistakably Grandpa's. On the first page, he'd written, "For Amelia, the only one who ever listened." Tears filled my eyes. I flipped through the pages, filled with schematics, coordinates, and notes about business transactions. Then one line caught my attention. "The world will only see the wealth, but not the wisdom. The real treasure isn't gold, it's what protects it." The velvet box was small, barely larger than the watch itself. When I opened it, light caught on something dazzling, a key, pure gold, with the letter T engraved in its center. Beneath it, a note. "This key opens what they'll never find, the vault that guards their greed." I froze. A vault? A real one? My hands trembled as I looked around the room, wondering if there was more. The journal hinted at an upper chamber, but nothing in the cabin matched that description. My mind spun with questions. What had Grandpa built? And why leave it all to me? Somewhere above, thunder cracked, shaking dust from the ceiling. It was as if the world itself knew I had just uncovered the first piece of something enormous. And in that moment, surrounded by the ticking echo of that golden watch, I realized my inheritance wasn't just a mystery. It was a test, and I had only begun to solve it. I barely slept that night, curled up on the dusty floor of Grandpa's hidden vault, the golden key clutched in my hand like a lifeline. The journal pages whispered to me under flashlight glow, their edges worn but the ink still sharp. Grandpa had written of trust, of secrets, of a legacy protected by time and greed. Every page deepened the mystery. Every line felt like a breadcrumb leading somewhere bigger. But one passage burned into my mind. The hands of time must meet the heart to reveal the truth. I had no idea what it meant, but I couldn't shake the feeling it referred to more than just the watch. Maybe something he'd hidden from everyone, something only I could uncover. The key gleamed faintly as I turned it in my palm, feeling the engraved T press into my skin. Thornwood, my family name. And now, maybe my biggest curse and greatest blessing. When I finally drove back home, dawn was just breaking, the world painted gold and gray. I should have felt victorious, but my chest buzzed with unease. I kept thinking about the rest of my family, the ones who'd walked away with millions while I was crawling through tunnels. Did Grandpa know how cruel they'd become, or was this all his way of making things right in secret? When I got home, I laid everything on the table, the watch, the map, the journal, and that key. Then, something new caught my attention. Inside the watch's lid, beneath the words, To those who look beyond time. There were faint markings I hadn't noticed before. Letters, almost invisible. HAT. I thought it was a maker's mark until I saw the same letters etched into the corner of Grandpa's journal. My mind raced. Was it an acronym? Or another clue? I flipped through the pages again until I found a note scrawled in the margin. HAT, Heart of All Time, Secure Location, T Industries. That was it. Thornwood Industries, Grandpa's old company, the empire he built from nothing. It was now run by my Uncle Richard, a man who wore wealth like armor and treated everyone else like dirt. The idea of walking into that corporate fortress with a mysterious key and a pocket watch felt insane. But something told me that was exactly where the next part of this mystery waited. I dressed sharp, the kind of confidence disguise Grandpa used to call armor for the underestimated. By noon, I was standing in front of Thornwood Tower, its mirrored surface reflecting a sky full of storm clouds. The receptionist smiled, that polite, empty smile corporations train into people. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "I'm here for a personal matter," I said, holding up the watch like it was a badge of authority. For a moment her eyes flickered. Recognition, maybe. Then she whispered into her headset, and within minutes, I was being escorted upstairs. Uncle Richard was waiting in his glass-walled office, wearing that same smug smirk he'd perfected at every family gathering. "Amelia," he said, standing to greet me, his voice syrupy and false. "What brings you here? Finally ready to sell that trinket Grandpa gave you?" His laughter grated against my nerves. I set the watch on his desk, its ticking filling the silence. "I think Grandpa left me more than just a trinket," I said. "And I think you know something about it." His smile faltered. "You're chasing ghosts," he said, sitting down slowly. But I saw it, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "What's the heart of all time?" I asked. That got him. His expression hardened. "Where did you hear that?" he demanded. I leaned forward. From the man who built this company, the man who trusted me when no one else did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, with a resigned sigh, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a faded security badge. He tossed it across the desk. "If you really want to chase this madness, go down to sub-level 3. But don't say I didn't warn you." I grabbed the badge before he could change his mind. As I turned to leave, he added, "Whatever you find down there, remember, Grandpa wasn't the saint you think he was." His words echoed in my mind as the elevator descended deeper than I'd ever imagined the building went. The air grew colder, the hum of machinery louder. The doors opened to a dimly lit hallway lined with reinforced doors, each labeled with technical terms I didn't understand. But one stood out. Project HAT, restricted. My heart raced. I scanned the badge and the lock clicked open with a hiss. Inside was a lab frozen in time. Dust-covered consoles and screens, but in the center of the room stood something strange. A cylindrical vault made of tempered glass and titanium. Engraved on its surface were the same clock symbols from Grandpa's journal. I approached cautiously, the golden key trembling in my hand. When I inserted it into the slot, the machine hummed to life, lights flickering like waking eyes. The floor vibrated as mechanisms turned, gears aligning, until the glass shell slowly split open. Inside was a small metal box, simple, unmarked, but humming faintly with energy. I opened it, expecting jewelry or documents. But instead, I found another pocket watch, identical to mine, except for one detail. The second hand was missing, replaced with a thin, glowing crystal pulse. A low voice echoed from behind me. "I see you found it." I spun around. Uncle Richard stood at the door, flanked by 2 security guards. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with greed. "Do you have any idea what that is?" he asked, stepping closer. "Grandpa didn't invent a company, he invented time itself." My mind reeled. "What are you talking about?" He smirked. Walter Thornwood wasn't just a businessman. He was a genius who found a way to compress data through temporal frequency. That watch, both of them, are keys to his real fortune. The safe you found? That was just the first layer. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Give me the watch, Amelia, and I'll make sure you get your fair share." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Grandpa didn't trust you," I said. "He trusted me," Richard laughed, cold and sharp. "He trusted no one. You think he gave you that watch because he loved you? He gave it to you because he needed a pawn. You're just finishing his game." I gripped the glowing watch tighter. "Maybe, but I'm finishing it my way." Before he could react, I slammed the watch's face against the original one in my hand. The crystal flared with blinding light, and the air rippled like water. The guards shouted, stumbling back as the floor trembled. Suddenly, time itself seemed to slow. Richard's voice stretched into an echo, the light bending around us. And in that frozen instant, I saw something impossible. A figure standing between the flashes of light. It was Grandpa. Or at least, a projection of him. "If you're seeing this," his voice said, calm and warm, "then the wrong hands have reached too far. Amelia, my dear, trust the time. The truth lies where it began." The image flickered and faded, leaving silence. Then the lights in the room died, plunging us into darkness. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Uncle Richard's face, pale, furious, and terrified. When I woke up, the lab was empty, the watches gone, and the door sealed shut from the outside. But in my pocket, something new waited. A folded note, scrawled in the same handwriting as the journal. "You're close. The past must guide you now. Find the place where time stopped." And suddenly I knew where I had to go next. The old train station, the one Grandpa used to take me to as a kid, where the clocks had been broken for decades. Whatever he'd hidden, whatever heart of all time truly meant, it wasn't finished yet. And I wasn't about to stop now. Not when every second ticked closer to the truth. The drive to the old train station felt longer than I remembered, though maybe it was because my thoughts refused to slow down. Grandpa's last message echoed in my head like a heartbeat. Find the place where time stopped. The town had changed over the years. New stores, cleaner streets, but the station remained exactly the same, a relic frozen in dust and silence. The air was thick with the scent of rust and memory. The clock tower above the platform still displayed the same time it had the day the train stopped running. 7. That cursed hour again. As I stepped through the cracked glass doors, the faint creak of the floorboards beneath my boots was the only sound. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice in my mind, that low hum of mischief he always carried when he was hiding something important. The platform was empty except for the pigeons that fluttered from beam to beam. I walked toward the far end, where a rusted locomotive sat trapped in time, its wheels locked, its metal skeleton devoured by decay. Grandpa used to bring me here when I was little, telling me stories about how this station was once the heart of the city, how people believed the clock above was so precise it beat with the world. I used to think that was just one of his poetic metaphors, but now it felt like a clue. I stared up at the clock, noticing something I hadn't before. The face wasn't just glass. It shimmered faintly in the sunlight like crystal. My heart raced. I climbed the old iron staircase to the clock tower, each step groaning beneath my weight. When I reached the top, I found the clock's inner workings covered in dust, and right in the center, a small circular indentation, identical to the one that had opened the safe in Grandpa's cabin. I reached into my coat and pulled out the golden key. I hesitated for a moment. What if this was another trap? Another test? But I couldn't turn back now. I inserted the key into the slot, and as it turned, a soft hum filled the tower. The gears began to move for the first time in decades, the second hand ticking forward with a slow, rhythmic pulse. The light through the glass turned golden, then blinding. Suddenly, the air seemed to split apart, and the floor beneath me gave way. I gasped as I fell into darkness, landing hard on what felt like stone. My flashlight rolled away, flickering. When I grabbed it and shone it forward, I froze. I wasn't in the tower anymore. I was standing in a hidden chamber beneath the station, a vast underground hall lined with mechanical structures, gears larger than cars, and pipes that pulsed with faint blue light. It looked like something out of a science fiction dream, or nightmare. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by ancient monitors and control panels. Above it, suspended in the air, was a massive orb of glowing crystal, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. On the floor around it were symbols, the same clock patterns, looping endlessly in a spiral. I stepped forward and the air vibrated with energy. A voice echoed softly, mechanical but unmistakably familiar. "Welcome, Amelia Thornwood." My chest tightened. Grandpa's technology was still alive. "Identity confirmed," it continued. "Legacy protocol initiated." The lights brightened, and a holographic projection flickered into existence in front of me. Grandpa again. But clearer this time, smiling gently as if he'd been waiting all along. "Hello, my dear," the hologram said. "If you've come this far, then you've done what none of them could. You listened." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Grandpa," I whispered, "what is this place?" His image turned slightly, looking at the glowing orb. "This is the heart of all time," he said. "My life's work and your inheritance. It isn't money, Amelia. It's power. Not the kind your uncle chases, but something far greater. A machine that can preserve moments, rewrite them, even glimpse what could be." I stared in disbelief. "You built a time machine?" He chuckled softly. "Not quite. Time is not a thing one can travel through. It's a frequency, a rhythm. I learned how to tune into it. But power like that can destroy as easily as it creates. That's why I hid it." His eyes darkened. "And why I only left the path to someone who understands the difference between greed and purpose." I swallowed hard. "Uncle Richard knows," I said. "He's looking for it, too." Grandpa's image flickered. "I suspected as much. He always wanted to own time. But you, Amelia, you listen to it." The orb pulsed brighter. "This machine holds the recordings of everything I've built, every secret, every code. But it also guards something else, the access to the real vault. The one no amount of money can open." My breath caught. "The $10 million safe?" He smiled. "Not just 10 million, my dear. 10 times that. But it's not the money that matters. It's what's inside. The documents that prove who tried to steal this technology, who betrayed me." My mind spun. "You mean Richard? And others," he said quietly. "But only you can reveal it." Suddenly, the ground trembled. The hologram glitched, fading in and out. I turned and saw movement in the shadows, flashlights, voices. My blood ran cold. "She's down here!" a voice shouted. Richard, he'd followed me. "Grandpa," I gasped. "They're coming." His flickering image looked straight at me. "Then it's time, Amelia. Use the watch. Trust the time." The projection vanished, and the room went silent except for the sound of boots echoing down the tunnel. I reached for the pocket watch, and it was glowing, the hands spinning wildly. I didn't know what I was doing, but I held it toward the orb. The moment the two connected, the world exploded in light. When the glow faded, I wasn't sure if I was alive. The orb pulsed faintly, slower now, as though it had exhausted itself. The entire chamber hummed softly, and on the platform where the hologram had stood, a new pedestal had risen from the floor. On top of it sat a small metal case labeled "Final Trust." I grabbed it just as Richard burst into the chamber, his face red with fury and awe. "You did it!" he hissed. "You actually found it." He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the case. "Hand it over, Amelia. You have no idea what you're playing with." My heart pounded as I backed away. "Neither do you." He lunged forward, but before he could reach me, the platform beneath him shifted, gears grinding as the floor began to retract. Richard stumbled, shouting as he clung to the edge. "Help me!" he screamed. I froze, torn between vengeance and mercy. But then I remembered Grandpa's words. The difference between greed and purpose. I reached down and grabbed his arm. "Let go of the greed, Richard," I shouted. His grip loosened for a moment, but his other hand snatched for the case. The movement threw us both off balance. The next second, the floor gave way completely, and he was gone. The chamber shook again, the lights flickering violently. I had no choice. Clutching the case, I sprinted toward the exit tunnel as the machinery roared behind me. The sound of collapsing metal echoed like thunder, chasing me up the staircase and into the night. When I finally burst out onto the empty platform, the clock above struck 7 once more, the hands frozen in perfect alignment. The heart of all time had sealed itself again. I stood there, trembling as dawn began to break over the horizon. In my hands, the case was warm, humming faintly. I opened it slowly, expecting more money, maybe more technology. But inside was something else entirely. A single piece of folded paper and a flash drive. The paper read, "The final key lies not in time, but in truth. Use what you find to protect what's rightfully yours." And beneath that, Grandpa's signature, the one I hadn't seen since the will reading. The flash drive, small and silver, bore the Thornwood crest. I didn't know what it contained yet, but I knew one thing. Whatever it was, it would change everything. As the sun climbed higher, I looked at the watch still ticking in my palm. Time had always been Grandpa's greatest obsession, but now I realized it was also his message. Every tick, every puzzle, every useless gift was leading to this. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the game wasn't over yet. Because if Grandpa had built something this powerful, there was no way the world, or my family, would let it stay buried forever. The morning light spilled through the station's broken windows, painting the world in pale gold, but I barely noticed it. My hands were trembling as I stared at the flash drive and the folded note inside the small metal case. Grandpa's message. "The final key lies not in time, but in truth," circled in my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. Everything I had uncovered so far, the pocket watch, the secret vault, the heart of all time, felt like the prelude to something much larger. If Grandpa's warning was right, this wasn't just about money. It was about exposing something he'd hidden from everyone, maybe even from history itself. I slipped the drive into my pocket, took one last look at the motionless station clock, and walked into the sunlight, not knowing that by nightfall, the entire world would know the Thornwood name again. I didn't go home. I couldn't. My apartment suddenly felt unsafe, too easy to find. Richard was gone, but the look in his eyes before the floor gave way, that wild desperation, told me others might still be watching. Thornwood Industries wasn't just a family company, it was a web of power, corruption, and buried secrets. So instead, I drove to an old motel 2 towns over and checked in under a fake name. The place smelled of cheap soap and cigarette smoke, but the lock worked and that was enough. I opened my laptop and inserted the flash drive, holding my breath as the screen flickered to life. At first, there were just folders, dozens of them, labeled with dates and cryptic codes. But one folder stood out. Truth. I clicked it, and my world tilted. Inside were scanned documents, video files, and recorded conversations. The first video showed Grandpa, younger, sharp-eyed, wearing the same calm expression I'd seen in the hologram. "If you're watching this," he began, "then you've found what I couldn't finish. The truth about Thornwood Industries." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. This company wasn't built on innovation alone. It was built on stolen time, literally. He explained how decades ago he had discovered the frequency of temporal resonance, a formula that could manipulate the perception of time. But when he tried to develop it ethically, his own board, including Richard, had turned against him. They had taken his designs, used them for covert defense contracts, and profited from technologies that could predict market trends, intercept communications, even alter timestamps on global systems. Grandpa's voice hardened. They used time to rewrite truth, and I refused to be part of it. My pulse raced as I read the attached documents. Confidential memos, signed deals, evidence of data manipulation worth billions. If this went public, it wouldn't just destroy Thornwood Industries. It would shake governments. Grandpa had hidden everything, not just money but evidence, and left it to me. The realization hit like lightning. The $10 million safe wasn't filled with gold or bonds. It was protection money, liquid assets meant to defend whoever carried this truth. That's why he left me the watch. He hadn't wanted me to find the fortune. He wanted me to guard the truth behind it. My stomach twisted as I imagined the fallout. If I released this, my entire family would be ruined. But if I didn't, Grandpa's legacy, and his warning, would vanish into silence. That's when the motel lights flickered. My laptop screen glitched, the files flashing and disappearing. Panic shot through me. Someone was hacking into the drive remotely. I yanked it out, my heart pounding. Seconds later, I heard it, the faint rumble of an engine outside. I peeked through the blinds. A black SUV was idling across the street, its windows tinted. My breath caught. They'd found me. I stuffed everything into my bag and slipped out through the back alley. The air smelled of rain and gasoline. I ran through the narrow streets until I reached the edge of town, where the old bridge stretched over the river. My car was parked nearby, but as I approached, I noticed something strange. The pocket watch in my hand had stopped ticking. Dead still. For a second, I felt a wave of dread, like time itself was warning me. Then I heard footsteps. "Amelia," a voice called softly. I spun around. A woman stood in the shadows, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a dark suit. Her presence radiated quiet authority. "You don't know me," she said, stepping closer. "But I knew your grandfather." Her tone was steady, controlled. "He told me that one day his granddaughter might find what he left behind." My grip on the watch tightened. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Let's just say I'm one of the few who tried to protect him from what Thornwood Industries became." "My name's Evelyn Hart," she paused. "And if you want to survive this, you'll come with me." Every instinct screamed at me to run. But there was something in her eyes, the same quiet determination I'd seen in Grandpa's. I followed her to a sleek car parked under the bridge. Inside, she opened a tablet showing satellite images and encrypted files. "Your uncle wasn't the only one after the heart of all time," she explained. "There's a network, investors, former board members, even intelligence agents, who've been trying to locate it for years. They believe your grandfather's invention can alter real-time surveillance systems. They'll kill to get it." My throat tightened. "What do they want from me?" Evelyn looked at me seriously. "You hold the only copy of the proof that can expose them, the truth he died protecting. That flash drive isn't just evidence. It's leverage." We drove through the night, headlights slicing through the fog. Evelyn handed me a burner phone and a small metal case. "Inside is a transmitter," she said. "If something happens to you, it will release your grandfather's files to every major news outlet in the world." I swallowed hard. "So basically a dead man's switch." She nodded. "Exactly." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt both terrified and powerful. The next morning, we stopped at a diner in a quiet coastal town. While Evelyn stepped outside to make a call, I opened the watch again, tracing its edges. For the first time, I noticed something hidden behind the inner casing, a faint line like a seam. I pried it open carefully, and inside a microfilm strip gleamed. My breath caught. Etched on it were more coordinates, but this time, they led to somewhere in the ocean, near an island off the coast of Greece. When Evelyn returned, I showed her. Her expression darkened. "That's impossible," she whispered. "That's where Thornwood Technologies moved their private archives after your grandfather's death. If those coordinates are real, there's something bigger than both of us waiting there." I looked out the window, the waves crashing beyond the horizon. Grandpa's game wasn't over. Not even close. Maybe the 10 million wasn't the end of his treasure, but a doorway, a breadcrumb to something he'd buried so deep that only blood and time could uncover it. That night, I stood on the pier, the wind whipping through my hair, the golden watch ticking once again, faint, alive, as if it knew what came next. The truth wasn't just hidden in vaults or codes anymore. It was in motion, flowing through every second I dared to chase. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice again, calm and amused. "Time doesn't belong to those who own it, Amelia. It belongs to those who understand it." And as the waves crashed against the shore, I finally understood. My inheritance wasn't a watch or a fortune. It was destiny, and the clock had just started ticking toward the final reckoning.